rumors spread about the baby born with a tail. Some called him cursed, monkey boy, or evil child.
My name is Kelechi.
But why was I born this way, Mama? Why me? Never forget who you are, Kelechi. You are my precious son, and the ancestors' chosen one. Your tale makes you unique and special. Kelechi must leave. Stay kind, stay vigilant, and remember all I've taught you. A warrior controls his power. He does not let anger control him. Many years ago, there was a small remote village in Nigeria called Udo. Villagers went about their days fetching water, tending farms, and caring for livestock while they whisper stories to each other about signs and old prophecies. One prophecy loomed large over Udo, that one day a special child would be born with the power to save the village from a great calamity. No one knew when or how such a prophecy might come to pass, but the villagers thought about the prophecy a lot, especially when times were scary. For Ajani and his wife Ngozi, the prophecy became extra meaningful the day Ngozi went into labor to have her baby. The couple had been trying to have a baby for many years without success. Ngozi finally being able to get pregnant and deliver the baby safely seemed like a miracle. When Ajani first held his new baby boy, Kelechi, he felt great joy. The baby had lots of black hair and cried loudly, making Ajani laugh happily. Finally, he had a son to carry on the family name and help work the fields when older. Ajani thanked the ancestors for this wonderful gift. In the first months, Kelechi seemed normal. He nursed strongly and grew bigger every day. But around 5 months old, Ajani noticed something strange. A tiny tail was growing above Kelechi's bottom. Ajani shook his head in disbelief, but over the next weeks the tail kept growing, finally reaching 3 inches long. Fear entered Ajani's heart. What could this mean? He had never seen anything like it. Ngozi was worried too, but hoped it was nothing serious. The tail did not hurt Kelechi or cause other problems. In every other way, he was a normal, healthy baby. By Kelechi's first birthday, the tail had grown to 9 inches long. It had fine black fur that matched his hair. Ajani and Ngozi could no longer hide or deny it, though they wanted to protect their son from harm or judgment. In the village, strange rumors spread about the baby born with a tail. Some called him cursed, monkey boy, or evil child. Friends and neighbors avoided visiting Ajani's hut. Only the wise old medicine woman, Mama Decay, saw the tale as a divinely inspired occurrence. She alone retained faith in the prophecy that this special child was meant to save them all. The villagers refused to heed Mama Decay's words. They were preoccupied with their many other troubles. Raiding parties from the fierce bandit leader Ndidi and his men were terrorizing the village from time to time, stealing their livestock and grain and sometimes taking women in the village as captives. No one knows the hideout of these robbers, but it is believed that they reside deep in the jungle. Ndidi had vowed to make everyone in the village pay for such unfair treatment they did to her mother with his last breath. What could be the motivation behind Ndidi's anger? And why is he so bent on taking revenge on the Udo village? Okay, let me tell you the backstory of what happened to Ndidi's mother. Many years ago, a young woman named Chika found herself cast out from Udo village after getting pregnant without being married. The unforgiving villagers rejected her as the child's father refused to marry her. With no family left, Chika wandered into the jungle alone. She eventually gave birth to a son she named Ndidi. They managed to survive in the wilderness together through Chika's fierce determination. She refused all offers to return to the village that had been so cruel to her. One day when Ndidi was 7 years old, Chika went to the riverbank for water but never came back. After many hours, Ndidi found her body there. She had been bitten by a deadly snake. Overcome with grief and anger, Ndidi cried out in pain into the night. Ndidi was young at the time, but he remembered everything as if it happened yesterday. He swore revenge on the village that had sentenced his mother to die alone in the jungle. From that day on, hatred toward Udo grew inside him. As a teenager, Ndidi's anger and strength only increased. He wrestled alligators and roamed the jungle as if he owned it. When he was 18, he met a group of armed men passing through. Impressed by Ndidi's boldness, they asked him to join their bandit gang. Ndidi saw this as the perfect chance to get revenge. He quickly rose up the ranks with his bravery and skill in raids. When the old leader died over a fight, Ndidi took charge. Now, as the new leader, he could finally punish Udo village for their past wrongs. Ndidi planned random raids to terrorize, rob, and kidnap people from Udo. He enjoyed seeing fear in the villagers' eyes when his men attacked. Their suffering would be his long-awaited payback. After every raid, he hoped his mother's spirit rested more peacefully. Okay, back to the story. The people of Udo lived in fear of the next attack. Ajani and Ngozi focused on protecting young Kelechi from harm, while hoping someday the villagers would see past his tale to the good heart underneath. Kelechi grew up lonely and doubted if he could ever find acceptance, wondering about his unknown destiny because the villagers' fear and superstition only increased. By age 5, Kelechi's tail had grown to 2 feet long, strong and flexible like a monkey's. It twitched and waved behind him constantly, impossible now to hide. Kelechi was a gentle, quiet boy who did not understand why the other children shunned and taunted him. Their cruel words cut him deeply. One day, Kelechi saw the village boys and girls laughing and playing games outside their hut. But when he came out to join them with his tail happily swaying, they screamed and ran away. They threw stones, calling him evil and demon child. Kelechi retreated into the safety of his family's hut, tears streaming down his cheeks. His heart ached at the cruelty of the other children. He had only wanted to play with them, to feel normal and accepted for once. But their rejection cut deeply, confirming his worst fears that he would never belong in this village. Ngozi hugged her son as he cried. She petted his fuzzy tail to make him feel better. She hummed a lullaby that she used to sing to him when he was a baby. Kelechi held on tight to his mom. Her unconditional love for him made him feel safe. "Do not despair, my child," Ngozi said once his sobs had quieted. "Those children do not understand you as I do, but one day they will see your goodness and your worth." Kelechi looked up at her with watery eyes. "But why was I born this way, Mama? Why me?" Ngozi smiled softly, wiping the tears from his cheeks with her thumb. "Because you have been blessed, my love. The ancestors chose you for a special purpose, though we do not yet know what it is." She leaned down to press a kiss between his ears. "Never forget who you are, Kelechi. You are my precious son, and the ancestors' chosen one. Your tale makes you unique and special." Kelechi managed a small smile at his mother's reassurance. If she believed in him, perhaps there was hope he could find belonging after all. Just then, Ajani ducked through the low doorway. He looked worried. When he saw that his son had been crying and had tears on his face, Ajani frowned even more. "Who made you cry?" Ajani asked in a deep voice. Was it the other children again? He clenched his fists. "I warned them what would happen if they continued tormenting my son." "Calm down, my husband," Ngozi warned, standing up and putting her hand on his arm. "Getting angry and making threats won't change how they feel. The kids are being mean because they are scared and don't understand. We have to be patient." Ajani's shoulders slumped. "You speak wisdom as always, wife, but it pains me to see our boy suffer so." Ajani turned to look at Kelechi. "I only want to protect you, son. If I could shield you from all hurt." "I know, Baba," Kelechi said. Though quiet by nature, Ajani's protectiveness made him feel safe. He knew his father loved him deeply. Ngozi pointed to the clay pots in the corner of the hut. "Come, it is time to prepare the evening meal." Kelechi was glad for the distraction. He fetched water from the well while his parents kindled the cooking fire. Doing the normal things at home made him feel better. He tried to push the other children's cruelty from his mind. As daylight faded, the family ate bowls of jollof rice by firelight. Ngozi told folk tales passed down from their ancestors, making Kelechi and Ajani laugh. For now, all was peaceful. But later that night, Kelechi couldn't fall asleep. He lay awake on his mat long after his parents had already gone to sleep. His tail kept twitching as he thought about things that worried him. Why had he been born this way? What was his purpose if the villagers would never accept him? These questions kept going around and around in Kelechi's mind. Finally, he fell into a restless sleep full of dreams. Over the next few years, life continued much the same. Kelechi kept to himself, wary of attracting unwanted attention. The villagers maintained their superstitious whispers and suspicious looks whenever he ventured through town. The cruelty of the children eased somewhat as they grew older, but they remained aloof, never inviting Kelechi to join their games. Kelechi felt very lonely as he did his chores, taking care of his family's goats in the hills outside the village. His tail dragged sadly in the dirt behind him. He felt like his tail was a burden, not the blessing his mother said it was. That night, Kelechi talked to his friend, an old solid tree in front of their hut. He was very sad. He put his hands on the bumpy tree trunk. He told the tree how hopeless he felt and how he doubted himself. The tree did not talk back, but it was a good listener. Standing next to the solid old tree made Kelechi feel a little better. From the edge of the village, old Decay watched Kelechi closely, smiling to himself. The child's spirit was strong, even under such duress. Decay's aged eyes saw what others could not, the glimmer of destiny about the boy. Kelechi was special. Someday he will be a great leader. Decay was certain of it. Kelechi woke up early in the morning, like he did every day. He was still tired from training with his dad yesterday, but he got up quickly, not wanting to waste any time. After washing up and getting dressed, he went outside into the misty morning air. The village was quiet and still. Most people were not awake yet this early. Kelechi enjoyed the peace and quiet. It was the only time he could move around freely without people giving him mean looks and saying bad things. Kelechi went to the nearby forest, his tail swinging excitedly. Under the cool tree leaves, he started running. He jumped over fallen logs and ducked under low branches. He pushed his muscles hard, using his tail to go faster and higher. Running made him forget his worries and just feel joy and freedom. After running, Kelechi stopped by a hidden pond to catch his breath. His muscles were pleasantly tired. He crouched down and looked at his reflection in the still water. He saw his familiar face, serious brown eyes, high cheekbones, and angular jaw. But below was an image that was strange to him, his long, dark tail that made him different. Cursed. Kelechi frowned and stood up. Why did he have to be born this way? Without this awful tail, he could be like any other boy in the village, with friends and a normal life. His bitter thoughts were interrupted by the growing noise back in the village. The day was starting. With a sigh, Kelechi turned and headed home. Far away from the village, hidden deep in the jungle, was the hideout of Ndidi the bandit leader. It had been a long time since their last good raid. His men were getting restless. The recent storms had also damaged their hideout. They would need to attack a village again soon. Sitting near the flickering campfire, deep in the jungle, his raiders crowded around him. Their eyes showed fear, but also greed. Ndidi thought about which nearby villages they could raid. He remembered Udo had very poor defenses when he scouted it before. Yes, Udo would be perfect. The raid would remind the villagers to fear him, and he could steal their grain, animals, and other things. With a deep rumbling voice, Ndidi outlined his plan to strike Udo village once more. "We will attack them at dawn," he said, drawing a path in the dirt with a stick. "Half of you steal the cows. The others take as much grain as you can grab. And if anyone tries to stop you..." Ndidi slammed his fist into his hand with a loud smack that showed what would happen. Ndidi looked at Basi, his second in command. "Take some men tonight to scout their defenses," he ordered. "We will attack in 2 days." Basi nodded, his eyes shining with excitement. The raiders yelled and waved their weapons. Soon the village of Udo would learn what happens when you stand up to Ndidi and his men. Udo's peace would not last much longer. Meanwhile, in Udo village, Chief Okenwa sat among his council of elders. They all looked worried. The land was having problems. Cows were getting sick and dying. Crops were drying up in the fields. Every day the villager felt sadder and more uneasy. "Our people grow more desperate every day," one elder said sadly. "If the gods are not pleased soon, I fear what more we may suffer." The others murmured in agreement. Since the abnormal boy's birth, Udo had been cursed with poor harvests, sick animals, and bad luck. Deciding their next steps was very urgent. Okenwa stayed quiet, listening to each person, but in his mind, the decision was already made. As chief, the village's well-being had to come first. Even though difficult, the boy Kelechi had to be banished for prosperity to return. The debate went on for long. Okenwa finally held up his hand. "Enough," he said. "For our people's good, the boy, Kelechi, must leave." A sad silence filled the room. The chief could picture the loneliness ahead for young Kelechi, and his heart grieved over what had to happen. But he hardened his resolve. One boy's life against an entire village was no choice at all. The chief considered this. Yes, banishing the boy could appease the gods and end this plague upon their home. "It shall be done," the chief declared. "One way or another, Kelechi must go." Kelechi did not know about the plans against him. He came home to find his father waiting. "You're late, boy," Ajani said in his deep voice. He held his staff in his hands. Even though he was older now, Kelechi's father was still a huge, strong man. "It's time for your lessons." Kelechi looked down. "Yes, father, I'm ready." They went to the small yard beside their hut. Ajani had made a packed dirt circle there for practice. "Get in your stance," he ordered. Kelechi obeyed and got into the poses his father had taught him day after day. He moved from one pose to the next, holding his tail tight for balance. "Remember, you are strong, but others will see you as weak," Ajani said. He watched Kelechi closely. "You must be prepared. Also remember, son, balance is key. Your tail is your advantage. Use it." Kelechi nodded. "The villagers may insult and shun you, but never doubt your worth," Ajani said, holding Kelechi's gaze. "Stay kind, stay vigilant, and remember all I've taught you. A warrior controls his power. He does not let anger control him. His dad wanted him to be ready for the hate and violence he would face because of his tail. The training was about focus and discipline, not just fighting or combat skill. Kelechi nodded, sweat dripping on his brow as he focused on his father's every move. They sparred gently at first, but soon Ajani's blows came faster, each one blocked by Kelechi's tail. "Good! Again!" Ajani yelled. Kelechi moved like water flowing over rocks. Each hit and block told a story of survival. In her modest kitchen, Ngozi ground herbs with a mortar and pestle, getting breakfast ready for the family. Her thoughts were focused. She knew her son's life was full of danger and misunderstanding. A knock at the door broke her focus. Standing there was Mama DK, her eyes twinkling with unspoken knowledge. "Ngozi," she began softly, "I see greatness in Kelechi. He bears more than just a tale. He carries our ancestors' hopes." Ngozi welcomed her inside, her heart lightened by her words. Mama DK sat in his usual spot by the fire. She watched Kelechi training with Ajani closely. The old medicine woman couldn't help but smile. She saw each leap and jump as a verse from an ancient story coming to life. "He is indeed special," Ngozi said quietly. "Yes," DK nodded, "and in time, all will see it." Eventually, Ajani ended the lesson and Kelechi bowed with respect. His body ached, but his mind felt ready for anything. They went inside where Ngozi had set the table. Mama DK joined them for breakfast. "Eat up," Ngozi said gently. "You'll need your strength." DK encouraged Kelechi not to give up, no matter how the villagers treated him. Kelechi smiled, grateful. With his family and DK beside him, he could face anything, even this village and its hate. At the age of 15, the hardships of Udo village had moved from bad to worse, and they still blamed it on Kelechi. One faithful evening, it started raining very heavily in the village. Huge raindrops poured down fast in an angry storm. The hard rain turned the dirt paths into flowing mud rivers. Strong wind blew through the roofs made of straw. It was that same night the villagers decided they had had enough. Even though the rain was making their clothes all wet, a big angry crowd of at least 30 men, women, and even some kids with their flickering torches marched strongly through the storm. They were heading to the home of Kelechi and his parents. "Evil child," an old woman yelled as she hobbled along with the group, holding tight to her walking stick with her wrinkled hands. "He's brought a curse upon us all." Some other villagers shouted in agreement. Months of no rain and sickness had been hard on them. Crops dried up, cows got sick, kids went hungry. The people of Udo blamed Kelechi because his tail made him look different and strange. They thought he was cursed. The angry crowd came to Kelechi's hut, their torchlights flickering in the rain. His dad Ajani stood strong in the doorway with an upset face. Behind him, Kelechi's mom Ngozi held her son, looking scared. "Please," Ajani said, "leave the boy alone and let's talk about this calmly." The village chief pushed his way to the front of the crowd. "Your son is an abomination," he shouted with anger. "Our village has suffered long enough under his curse. He must leave now." The crowd yelled in agreement. Some started throwing stones, but Ajani blocked them. Kelechi looked out from behind his mom, frowning with worry. He had known this day might come, though he wished the villagers would finally accept him. Ngozi hurried to her room. Her hands were shaking as she quickly packed important things into a burlap sack. Dried meat, healing plants, torchlight, a spare outfit, sandals, a woven blanket. Every item she put in the bag made her sadder. The crowd got louder, their yelling heard even over the constant beating of the rain. Kelechi's tail swung back and forth, showing how upset he was. He could feel how desperate his dad was and how sad his mom was, even though they didn't show it. Ngozi turned to her son and gave him a special necklace with a polished stone pendant. It looked very beautiful. This has been passed down in my family for generations. It will protect you. Keep it close. Thank you, Mama. Kelechi was very appreciative of the gift. The necklace felt like it was alive when he wore it, a quiet promise to look after him when her mother wasn't there. They shared one last, desperate embrace. "Go, my son," she whispered with a sad voice, tears mingling with the rain on her cheeks. "You must survive tonight. Never forget that you are good, no matter what they say. Never give up. Always remember who you are, the choice of the ancestors. We will find you someday." Before Kelechi would reply with any more words, Ajani was pushed out of the way as the angry villagers rushed into the hut. There were too many villagers for Ajani to stop. Their anger pushed them forward. They broke down the door. Rough hands grabbed Kelechi and pulled him outside into the storm. Gozi screamed and tried to fight against Ajani as he held her back. The village chief looked at Kelechi for a moment and seemed a little ashamed. But then his face got hard and determined again. "Go," he commanded, pointing to the dark jungle behind the village. "That is where you belong. Do not return, or you will be stoned." The villagers yelled happily as Kelechi was pushed down the muddy road. He looked back once at his parents and gave a little brave smile. Tears blurred Kelechi's vision as he stumbled into the rain-soaked night. Mama Decay stood away from the crowd. She looked very upset and pained. "This is madness. You will regret this," she warned them, pointing her shaking finger at their angry faces. "The boy is not what is causing our problems. For so many months, we had no rain. But now it is raining, and instead of thanking the gods for the rain, you are being mean to this poor boy." Mama Decay said this shaking her head in sadness. She made it clear she never approved of their actions, but the villagers gave deaf ears to the wise sayings of Mama Decay. Kelechi was very frightened and tensed as he ran into the jungle, a destiny he never chose for himself. Kelechi ran without looking back, the mud slick beneath his bare feet as he navigated through familiar paths now made strange by betrayal. His heart raced, a wild drumbeat syncing with his tail that cut through the heavy air behind him. The village lights receded until darkness swallowed them whole. Then the jungle swallowed him up too. Sharp vines scratched Kelechi's skin and clothes. Rain pounded down through the dense canopy overhead. Strange cries echoed around him. Animals, spirits, things unknown. Still, Kelechi held his head high. He would not be afraid. He would survive this and someday return home, like his mother assured him. The people of Udo may have branded him cursed, but they did not know the true power hidden within this boy. Kelechi vowed he would prove them wrong. He would take his first steps into the jungle not as a helpless victim, but as a survivor. Holding his necklace, Kelechi sent a prayer to the gods for courage, wisdom, and protection. The necklace seemed to glow faintly, infusing him with inner strength. When lightning flashed in the sky, Kelechi's eyes shone with determination. With his necklace and his parents' prayers to guide him, he would make it through this exile. Now he was in the unknown jungle, where those like him belonged. Kelechi held the pendant, comforted by its warmth. He would make it through this night like his mom said, and one day he would go back home. With a cry, Kelechi sprinted into the shadows of the trees. He ran until his legs burned and his lungs screamed for air. Finally, he collapsed beneath a rocky overhang, breathing hard. Suddenly, he heard a faint voice calling his name. "Kelechi, Kelechi, wake up! Kelechi, Kelechi, wake up!"
Please tell me, are you enjoying the story? If so, tell me, what lessons have you actually learned? I would really love to hear your comments in the comment section down below. And remember to support this channel. Please subscribe, like the video, comment, just say something. Even a word could literally mean a whole lot. So I want you to tell me, what lessons have you learned from this story? Trust me, these are situations that most people actually gone through. I'm sure some of you that are watching this story have actually gone through this situation. So I want to hear from you. I want to hear how you dealt with the situation that you were faced with.
He opened his eyes slowly. He blinked a few times as the sun's rays peeked through the trees above. For a moment he felt confused and didn't know his location or how long he had been there. His mind flashed back to the last thing he could recall, falling to the ground, totally drained in the middle of the wild forest during a heavy downpour. This happened after his people forced him out of his village. Kelechi's eyesight slowly came into focus as he found himself resting on a mat made of woven grass in a little open space in the woods. Just a few steps away, a small flame flickered and crackled, sending wisps of smoke into the moist air. Beside the fire, an elderly man sat cross-legged. He had a beard and hair as white as snow. He was tending the flames with a stick, but he looked up when he noticed Kelechi staring at him. "Ah, you're finally awake," the old man said, his voice raspy but kind. "You've had quite an ordeal, haven't you?" With a groan of pain, Kelechi lifted himself up from the ground. His muscles felt sore and stiff. "Where am I?" he asked warily. "Who are you? What is this place?" The old man smiled, eyes twinkling. So many questions. "Fear not, all will be answered in time," said the old man. "My name is Uzoma. I found you passed out and brought you to my hut to recover." He pointed at a small straw hut that could be barely seen through the trees. Uzoma smiled and handed Kelechi some food. "You must be wondering why I brought you here." Kelechi looked at him with a puzzled expression. "Yes, I am. What's your reason?" "I couldn't let you die, of course," Uzoma said with a laugh. "Here, eat this. It will help you regain your energy." He passed a wooden dish to Kelechi that had a tasty soup in it. Kelechi took it with doubt, but then he ate it all up very fast. When he finished the soup, he felt more alive and less tired. "I appreciate your kindness," he said gratefully, returning the bowl. "You have done me a great favor. However, I must go now. My family must be worried." Uzoma shook his head. "I'm afraid you won't be going anywhere tonight. The jungle is dangerous after dark. You must rest here until morning." His tone left no room for argument. Uzoma's offer of shelter made Kelechi nervous. He agreed with the old man that he couldn't survive the jungle by himself in the dark, but he didn't trust him either. However, he had no other option than to stay with him. Uzoma broke the silence after a while. The fire was the only thing making noise, crackling softly. "Kelechi, you have a great destiny ahead of you," he said solemnly. "Your tale marks you as someone special. You have an important purpose. You are not the cursed boy from Udo. Never!" Kelechi gasped in shock. How did this stranger know his name, or about his tale, or where he was coming from? He glanced down self-consciously at the long dark tail curled around his waist. Uzoma seemed to read his thoughts. "All will become clear with time. For now, just know that I am here to guide you, Kelechi. The ancestors have sent me to help you understand your purpose and power." A strange sensation washed over Kelechi, and suddenly vivid images flickered before his eyes, or perhaps it was a vision granted by the ancestors. He found himself transported back to the day of his birth, witnessing his mother Ngozi cradling him as an infant, her fingers tracing the soft fur of his newborn tail. Ajani stood beside them, his expression a mix of pride and concern. The scene shifted, and Kelechi saw Mama Decay, the village elder, approach his parents' hut. "This child is blessed by the ancestors," she proclaimed, her voice resonating with ancient wisdom. "He bears a sacred mark, a sign that he is the one foretold in the prophecy, the one destined to save our village from a great calamity." Kelechi's parents looked at each other in confusion, but Mama Decay didn't let that stop her. "Treat him well, for his path will be difficult, but his purpose is true. When the time comes, a guide will appear to set him on his journey." As the vision faded, Uzoma's words echoed deeper within Kelechi's mind. The old man was the guide Mama Decay had spoken of, sent to unlock the potential within Kelechi and prepare him for his foretold destiny. Uzoma revealed glimpses of a great destiny ahead for Kelechi, one that would save his village. "Oh, so the people of Udo believed they were condemning you to a miserable fate, but they were wrong. They have brought you to the right place, where you will discover more about yourself and your destiny. You should get some rest," Uzoma said. He settled on his own mat and closed his eyes. Kelechi lay back slowly, watching the flickering fire flames and listening to the sounds of the jungle night. He had more questions than ever. His curiosity was unsatisfied, but his exhaustion overcame him. Soon he slipped into a deep, dreamless sleep. Kelechi woke up to find the mysterious old man gone. There was no sign of him, except for a cryptic note. "It is time. You will know what to do." Kelechi rubbed his eyes in disbelief. He was still in the jungle with his burlap sack and a full stomach, but his mind was full of questions. Was it a vision? He had heard of ancestors speaking through dreams, but he had never experienced it himself. He felt alone and confused. As he sat beside his small fire, memories returned in flashes. The angry villagers and their cruel acts towards him. His parents' scared and hopeless faces, running through the dense jungle alone in fear. Tears pricked his eyes, but he blinked them away. Out of anger, Kelechi pulled out the sharp knife he had crafted from a broken spearhead. He stared at the blade, then at his tail, twitching restlessly behind him. If he cut it off, he could return to the village, blend in, be normal. No more stares, no more whispers, no more monkey boy. Kelechi held his tail and extended it, placing the knife at the point where his fur ended and his skin began. He trembled. The metal felt like it was cutting him, even though he had not pressed it down yet. Kelechi's tail whipped out of his grasp, flinging the knife into the bushes. His heart raced as he gasped. He tried to grab the knife, but his tail struck once more, pushing it farther out of reach. It was as if his tail had a mind of its own, refusing to be cut, to be denied. Kelechi slumped back, confused and frustrated. "Why won't you let me do this?" he whispered to his tail, feeling foolish. "Don't you understand? Without you, I could go home. I could be accepted." But even as he said the words, Kelechi knew they weren't true. The prejudice and fear in the villagers' hearts wouldn't disappear just because his tail did. And cutting it off would mean rejecting a part of himself, a part that had kept him alive out here. Kelechi thought of his mother's words, her unwavering belief that his tail was a gift, not a curse. He thought of his mysterious mentor, Uzoma, urging him to embrace his uniqueness and fulfill his destiny. Slowly, Kelechi's fingers uncurled from around his tail. "No," he said softly, his voice gaining strength. "No, I won't cut you off. You're a part of me. And if I'm going to save my village, I need to be whole. I need to be me. Yes, you're now my new friend. I need to name you. I will call you Odudu." I think that's perfect. From that moment on, Kelechi no longer saw his tail as a hindrance or a source of shame. Instead, it became a symbol of his identity, his strength, and his purpose. He would return to Udo not as a boy seeking acceptance, but as a young man ready to claim his destiny. Kelechi had no option left but to embrace and accept his new home, the jungle. He carried himself up and continued his journey. Over the following weeks and months, Kelechi faced a harsh struggle for survival in the wilderness over the next weeks and months. He used the jungle resources to make tools and shelter, applying the skills his father had taught him. Kelechi searched for plants he could eat, set traps for small prey, and gathered rainwater for drinking. His tail, which the villagers had despised, was very useful. An extra limb to swing from trees, grab fruits, maintain balance. Gradually, Kelechi's muscles grew stronger, his senses sharper, his bond with nature deeper. The special necklace from Kelechi's mother was a constant comfort. Whenever danger drew close, a hungry predator or violent storm, the stone pendant would glow faintly, pulse with soothing energy, giving Kelechi the strength to endure. It made him feel connected to his parents, even far away. Udo village went on with its usual routines, but everyone missed the boy. Ngozi and Ajani felt empty without their son. They were always sad and anxious. Every night, Ngozi sobbed in Ajani's embrace until she fell asleep. But they never gave up hope, asking the ancestors every day to take care of their beloved boy. Sometimes, Ngozi would touch her neck where her precious necklace used to be, and wish that it was shielding Kelechi from harm. The peaceful night in Udo village was shattered by the sounds of war and metal. Ndidi and his raiders attacked the village without warning, their dark shapes looming in the moonlight. The houses that used to be filled with joy and warmth now quaked with fear. Villagers screamed, hugging their children as the bandits approached. They tried to escape the ruthless invaders who had conquered Udo many times. The bandits showed no mercy, stealing and burning everything they could find. With his spear in hand and a fierce resolve, Ajani led the community's defense against the bandits. He shouted orders amid the turmoil, inspiring the men to resist. But the attackers were relentless and outnumbered them. Yet for every bandit that fell, 2 more seemed to take their place. "Stand firm," Ajani shouted as he blocked a bandit's attack. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear but from rage at the sight of his village being torn apart. Ndidi's men captured whoever they could as the villagers ran away in fear. Ajani resisted bravely, swinging his staff and hitting their heads, but he could not match their numbers. Ajani was overwhelmed, disarmed, and beaten to the ground by the relentless bandits. He saw with horror how they tied up Ngozi and took her away, her cries piercing his heart. "Kelechi," she cried desperately before the bandits hauled her away. "Find us, my son. You must save us." Ajani roared, struggling against the men restraining him, but it was no use. He could only watch, helpless, as his wife and other women from Udo were dragged back towards the jungle, captives of the merciless Ndidi. The women screamed as they were herded like cattle into the darkness of the jungle, captives to be ransomed or worse. Ndidi's latest raid had left Udo village devastated. Homes were ransacked, livestock stolen, and several young women carried off as captives. The bandits had attacked with ruthless efficiency, overwhelming the meager village defenses. As the sun rose over Udo village, the scene was one of sadness and ruin. Charred buildings stood like solemn guards, overlooking people filled with deep distress. Husbands and fathers cried openly for their lost wives and daughters. Mothers held their remaining children tightly, gripped by intense fear. Families of the kidnapped women gathered at Chief Okenwa's hut, weeping. With sorrow and anger written on their faces, they pleaded for action, asked for hope, something to overcome the helplessness that had surrounded them. With a hollow and uncertain look in his eyes, Chief Okenwa faced his people. He hid his despair and spoke with feigned confidence. "We will get our loved ones back," he vowed. "I assure you that we will strengthen our defenses and prevent this from ever happening again." Whispers spread among the crowd. Some voiced doubts while others held desperately to his words. Inside, Okenwa felt a pang of despair. He knew promises were empty and had no backing. Privately, Okenwa confessed to the elders that he had no idea how to recover their people from the bandits' clutches. The village guards were no match for Ndidi's gang. Desperation and despair infected the very air of Udo. Udo village faced a double crisis: raids from enemies and drought from the sky. Ever since Kelechi was exiled, Udo village had not received a single drop of rain. The crops dried up, the cattle wasted away, and a silent plague infected both the young and the old. As the elders argued heatedly in the council meetings, they struggled to find any viable solutions. The chief's forehead was creased with worry. A silent guilt haunted every discussion. "Perhaps we made a mistake," one elder finally whispered softly. "The boy, Kelechi, he did not deserve to be banished. We cast him out unjustly." Murmurs of agreement stirred among them, a slow realization that perhaps they had been wrong to blame an innocent child for their misfortunes. Some villagers wondered aloud if banishing Kelechi had brought a curse upon them rather than appeasing the gods. Even those who had cried loudest for the boy's exile now felt twinges of regret. The people of Udo had lost their faith. They were blinded by their present woes and could not glimpse the promise of a better future. They did not know that Kelechi was getting closer every day, honing his skills in the jungle to prepare for his fate. Nor could they foresee the bandit king in his mountain lair, sharpening his weapons and plotting his next attack. Ndidi's hatred of Udo had curdled over the years into a dark obsession. Soon, he would unleash his fury upon the village in a final act of vengeance. But that battle was yet to come. For now, Udo village struggled on, praying for some miracle of deliverance. In his secret hideout in the heart of the jungle, Ndidi nursed his hatred. He could not forget how Udo village had killed his mother. He sought to ease his pain by taking revenge, not by offering mercy. "They took away my mother and I in return. Take their women, daughters, wife. How does it feel now? I will show them what it means to live without a mother." Ndidi smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment. Ajani sat alone in the empty hut, his head in his hands. Everything he had built, everything he loved, had been ripped away in an instant. First his son, cast out by his own people, and now his beloved wife stolen by raiders in the night. The weight of his failure was crushing. He should have protected them. He should have stopped the mob from exiling his innocent boy. He should have stood watch to keep Ngozi safe. But he had been powerless to prevent either tragedy. Some warrior he was. Ajani stared at the floor, tears dripping down his cheeks. His family was shattered, and he didn't know how to begin picking up the pieces. He felt an intense anger burning inside him. He needed to act quickly. In the jungle, Kelechi shot upright, clutching the pendant around his neck. It pulsed with energy, filling his mind with visions of his mother's frightened face. His heart clenched. Somehow he knew his village was in trouble once more. Leaping to his feet, Kelechi raced through the trees, following an instinctive pull. He had to get back to Udo, back to his family. They needed him now more than ever. Even though he felt strongly that he should do something, uncertainty ate at him, murmuring that he was not prepared yet to confront the fate that called him. In the jungle, Ndidi and his bandits celebrated their recent raid with loud laughter. They drank the beer they had stolen and warmed themselves by a roaring fire, their faces flushed with drunkenness. Ndidi sat on a makeshift throne of vines and bamboo, listening to his followers boast about the night's spoils. Trapped in a bamboo cage, Ngozi and the other women listened to their captors' laughter and drunken talk outside. Through the gaps in the bars, Ngozi heard their crude jokes and their plans for them, which filled them with terror. They held each other and sobbed quietly, afraid to make any noise. Ngozi prayed silently for her son to come and rescue them, but she did not dare to speak her hope aloud, lest she anger their kidnappers. Kelechi was left in his own doubtful thoughts. He wandered around the jungle, not knowing what to do or which next step to take. He knew he wasn't ready to return to Udo. In his silent thought, he said, "Don't worry, Mama and Baba. I will come and get you soon. It won't be long. I know and feel it." He asked his Odudu, "What do you think?" while smiling. Kelechi closed his eyes as the pendant pulsed warmly against his chest. Visions swirled before him. Uzoma appeared again, placing a hand on Kelechi's shoulder. "You have great power within you, young one, if only you can find it," Uzoma said. "Your gifts make you special, but they alone don't define your destiny. It is what lies in your heart that matters most." Kelechi saw Uzoma standing before him, regarding him with knowing eyes. "Your Odudu can be a weapon, but only if wielded with wisdom," Uzoma continued. "Come here, I will show you," Uzoma commanded. They stood within the confines of the dark trees around them. Kelechi saw himself training under the old man's guidance, learning to wield his tail as a weapon. "Watch," Uzoma instructed, lifting a rough staff. He swung it toward Kelechi with deceptive speed. Kelechi was supposed to block it with his tail, but it caught him off guard, landing him to the floor, weak. "Come on, boy. Remember, skill comes from practice. Strength comes from perseverance, but true power comes from compassion. Always be alert of your surroundings. Let's try again." Uzoma swung the staff in a different direction, more precise this time. Kelechi focused on the trainings from his father, Ajani. He said to himself, "Let's do this, my Odudu." He rose up. Kelechi reacted on instinct and spun around, swinging his tail to block the strike. His fur and muscle absorbed the impact of the staff, stopping its momentum. Uzoma smiled faintly. "Good. Again." They practiced until Kelechi's brow dripped with sweat and his tail swung with accuracy and strength. Uzoma spoke little during their practice, but his words were valuable lessons that Kelechi absorbed eagerly. Uzoma's teachings built upon the foundation Ajani had laid. Kelechi's father had trained him in traditional combat, honing his strength and reflexes. Now, Uzoma showed him how to integrate his unique abilities seamlessly, transforming his tail from a liability into a formidable weapon. With this knowledge, you can even do more. Practice till you perfect it and unleash the full power of your Odudu. "Well done, boy." Uzoma turned to leave. Kelechi exclaimed with wide eyes opened. "Does this mean I am ready to go save my people?" Kelechi asked in desperation. Uzoma replied, "You have your father's power and your mother's spirit. Every challenge is a lesson waiting to be understood." Uzoma disappeared. As the visions faded, Kelechi opened his eyes, feeling a newfound sense of purpose and confidence. He knew his destiny was intertwined with the fate of his village, and he was determined to rise to the challenge. But the reply from Uzoma was not what he expected, making him to wonder even more. Does his answer mean, "I am ready"? Feeling lost and disoriented, Ajani stood at the edge of the jungle. He could not tell where to go. The trees seemed identical, the paths twisted and turned unpredictably. Frustration and helplessness battled inside him as he clenched his fists. Ajani's longing for his family was stronger than the vast distance that separated them. He braved the jungle, a daunting barrier, with unwavering determination. He had ventured into the wilderness, driven by hope, but now he confronted the true difficulty of his quest. He would not give up. He paused, closing his eyes to steady his breathing. "I must find my family at all cost," he whispered into the silence. Back in Udo, the village chief walked back and forth in his palace, restless and worried. He commanded his men to strengthen the defenses. At every entrance, guards stood ready with spears and shields. The chief looked around fearfully, as though the bandits could appear at any moment. The chief was determined to protect what power he had left amidst the chaos. The villagers were in a frenzy outside. The news of the kidnapping raced through the crowd, sparking terror and gossip. Some sought solace in each other's arms, while some debated angrily about the next course of action. They regretted ignoring Mama Decay's warnings. They wished they had treated Kelechi with kindness. They thought, things were falling apart for the people who used to be so lively. They had been through a lot of bad stuff lately, and it was taking a toll on their bonds. They wished with all their hearts that someone brave and strong would show up and help them out of this mess. Kelechi felt at home in the jungle, where he enjoyed its music and its creatures. He was alone, but he did not mind. He did not have to face the mean villagers who blamed him for everything. He only wished he could see his parents again. He honed his craft, following Uzoma's teachings, and challenged himself every day. His tail was his friend, a weapon that responded to his every command. One day, while Kelechi was practicing his skills, he heard a noise in the bushes. A strange animal ran past him with a frantic speed. Out of curiosity, Kelechi felt a surge of interest and chased after it. The animal led him further into parts of the forest he hadn't seen much of before. It moved so rapidly that it pushed Kelechi to his limits as he tried to keep up. He followed an irresistible urge deeper into the jungle, where the dense foliage blocked out most of the sun. Ahead, he saw a glimmer of light breaking through the dimness, a flickering flame in the far-off clearing, but he had lost track of the animal. The strange animal had vanished, its purpose fulfilled, but Kelechi knew that its appearance had been no mere coincidence. It had guided him here for a reason. As Kelechi drew closer, he heard whispers over the fire's roar. He moved carefully, blending in with the darkness as he got closer to the source of the conversation. That was when he caught sights and sounds of the bandit raiders, making his blood turn to ice in his veins. Ndidi and his men, the very same villains that had tormented his village for years. As Kelechi kept watching, his mind drifted back to the story his mother had once told him about Ndidi's origins. How Udo cruelly treated Ndidi's mother, Chika, when she became pregnant out of wedlock. Kelechi could only imagine the hardships Ndidi and Chika had endured, scraping a life together in the jungle. He could relate to Ndidi's situation, as he has also been cruelly cast into the jungle. He couldn't help but feel a pang of pity for the bandit leader. Kelechi observed and paid attention. His sharp hearing and sight, made better from being in the jungle, let him overhear parts of what the criminals wanted to do. He became more and more worried as he found out they were plotting to attack Udo once more and destroy it completely. Kelechi felt sick to his stomach as he listened to Ndidi talk to the other bandits. Ndidi sounded mean and evil as he asked them, "What's a village without a king?" Ndidi seemed excited and happy about his nasty plan to kidnap Chief Okenwa and take over Udo village. Ndidi's cruel laughter even made Kelechi scared to the core. He could tell Ndidi couldn't wait to grab the chief and control whatever was left of the village after he ruined it. The rest of the gang moved closer, excited to listen to the scheme their boss had crafted. The robbers laughed loudly and celebrated, thrilled by the idea of taking complete control over the village. Kelechi's heart beat faster as he took in their evil plans. He refused to allow this to occur. He would not permit these raiders to destroy his village and make prisoners of its inhabitants. Kelechi saw the gang had kidnapped some women from Udo, which even made him feel sick to his stomach. They were crowded into a rough cage, their cheeks wet from crying and their eyes filled with hopelessness. As he looked closer, he spotted a familiar face among the prisoners. It was his very own mother, Ngozi. "Mama," Kelechi whispered, his voice catching in his throat. A wave of fear and confusion washed over him. What had happened to his father? How had his mother ended up in the clutches of these ruthless bandits? Kelechi knew he had to act fast. Every moment he delayed, his mother and the other captives were in greater danger. His eyes scanned the bandits around the fire and the captives in the cage. Formulating a plan, Kelechi calculated the risks and potential obstacles. He would have the element of surprise, but Ndidi's men were numerous and well-armed. A poorly executed attempt at rescue could prove disastrous, not only for himself, but for the prisoners as well. Time seemed to slow as Kelechi's mind raced, weighing his options. He could try to create a diversion, drawing the bandits away from the cage and giving him a window to free the captives. Or perhaps a stealthy approach, using the cover of darkness to slip in and silently release them, relying on his newly honed skills to evade detection. Each scenario played out in his mind, every variable considered, every potential pitfall accounted for. But with each passing moment, the sense of urgency mounted, like a coiled serpent ready to strike. Kelechi's gaze fell upon his mother, Ngozi, huddled among the other prisoners. Her face was etched with fear and despair, but in her eyes he saw a glimmer of hope, a silent plea for her son to be her family's salvation. It was that look that solidified Kelechi's resolve. He would not fail her, not again. Summoning every ounce of courage and determination, Kelechi readied himself to act. His tail twitched with anticipation, coiled like a spring, ready to unleash its full power. This was the moment he had been preparing for, the test of his newfound abilities and his true destiny. He took a deep breath, pushing aside any lingering doubts or fears. He was the chosen one, the boy with the prophetic tale, and it was time to embrace his calling. With one final glance at his mother's hopeful face, Kelechi stepped out of the shadows, ready to confront Ndidi and his men, ready to fight for the freedom of his loved ones and his village. But just as he was about to make his move, someone suddenly grabbed him from behind, covering his mouth and preventing him from making any noise. He fought against the stronghold, his tail whipping back and forth frantically, but the person would not let go. Kelechi's eyes widened in shock and terror as he was violently yanked backward into the dense foliage, his carefully laid plans failing in an instant. Had the bandits found him? Was he now a prisoner too, unable to rescue his mother and the other captives from his village? Was this where it all ends? His heart kept racing in fear.
If you made it to the end of part 2 of this thrilling story, then all I can say is congratulations and thank you. These videos really take a lot of time to make, but you guys' support really keep me going. Comments below and share this video with your friends and family. Also, like and subscribe to the channel so that you'll be the first to be notified when I drop a new video.
He fought against the stronghold, his tail whipping back and forth frantically, but the person would not let go. But then a familiar voice cut through the tense silence. "Shh, it's me, Ajani, your father," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. Kelechi's body went slack, the adrenaline draining away as he recognized his father's presence. Ajani released his hold, allowing Kelechi to turn and face him. They embraced, holding each other tightly, the fear and tension from the past few moments melting away. In the dim light, filtering through the dense foliage, Kelechi could see the lines of worry etched into his father's face, a testament to the trials they had both endured. "Baba, what are you doing here?" Kelechi asked, in a whisper to avoid detection. Ajani's eyes darted to the bandit camp before settling back on his son. "I was at the entrance of the jungle, trying to find a way out when I heard the commotion. I followed the sounds and stumbled upon their hideout. I overheard their vile plans just before I saw you, about to confront them alone. I held you back from attacking at that pivotal moment because I knew it could turn out disastrous." "Father, I'm so glad to see you," Kelechi said, his voice thick with emotion. Ajani pulled back slightly, looking into his son's eyes. "I'm glad to see you too, son," he replied, his voice gruff but filled with love. "But we don't have time. We need to act fast." Kelechi's heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and determination. "We have to stop them, father. They plan to capture Chief Okenwa and destroy Udo village. We can't let that happen." Ajani nodded, his jaw set with resolve. "I know, son, but we must be cautious. Rushing in without a plan could spell disaster for us and the captives." Kelechi felt the pressure mounting as he realized the gravity of their situation. Just a stone's throw away, his mother and the village women were in peril. Every part of him screamed to jump into action, to tap into his inner strength and protect his loved ones. But his father's steady presence tempered his impulsiveness. Ajani's years of wisdom and experience as a warrior shone through, even in this dire moment. Kelechi knew he had to trust in his father's guidance, just as he had to trust in his own abilities. "What do we do, father?" Kelechi asked, his voice trembling slightly. Ajani placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder, his grip firm and comforting. "We'll need to work together, Kelechi. Now, my brave son, let me ask you, what is your plan?" Ajani asked. "I'm going to distract the bandits," Kelechi explained, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "While I keep them occupied, you need to make your way to the cage and rescue Mama and the other captives." Ajani opened his mouth to protest, but Kelechi cut him off, his eyes blazing with resolve. "No matter what happens, Baba, don't come looking for me. It's too risky. Focus on getting the captives to safety, to the hideout where they can't be found." Kelechi placed a hand on his father's shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "I know my way around this jungle, and I know how to handle the bandits. Trust me, Baba. I can do this." Ajani searched his son's face, seeing the determination and courage that had grown within him during their time apart. With a heavy heart, he nodded, accepting the weight of Kelechi's words. "I won't let you down, father. I'll keep them distracted for as long as I can," Kelechi said. Ajani's eyes shone with pride, even amidst the gravity of their situation. "I know you won't, son, but remember, your safety is paramount. If things take a turn for the worse, you must retreat. We'll regroup and find another way." Kelechi hesitated for a moment, the thought of leaving his father and the captives behind causing his heart to clench. But he understood the wisdom in Ajani's words. They had to be smart, to think beyond the immediate battle. "I understand, father," Kelechi said, his voice steady. "And once you've freed the captives, take them to the safe hideout for the time being. After, you must warn the village. Ndidi's men are coming, and Udo must be prepared. Ajani nodded solemnly. I'll make sure they're ready, but for now, let's focus on the task at hand. He placed a firm hand on Kelechi's shoulder, a gesture of trust and support. I will do as you say, son, but promise me you'll be careful. I can't lose you again. Kelechi managed a small smile. I promise, Baba. Now let's do this. The father and son parted ways, each determined to play their role in saving their loved ones and protecting Udo village from the impending danger. Kelechi moved silently through the undergrowth, his heart pounding in his chest as he prepared to confront the bandits and rescue his mother, while Ajani crept towards the cage, ready to free the captives and deliver the crucial warning to the village. His tail twitched with anticipation, the power within him humming like a coiled spring. He knew that this was the moment he had been training for, the chance to prove himself and protect those he loved. With a silent prayer to the ancestors, Kelechi stepped out from the cover of the foliage, ready to face the bandits head-on. The time for hiding was over. Now it was time to fight. Drawing upon the skills he had honed during his time in the jungle and guided by Uzoma's teachings, Kelechi began to create a series of clever distractions. First, he picked up a handful of small stones and tossed them into the bushes on the opposite side of the camp, causing a rustling noise that immediately drew the attention of several bandits. As they moved to investigate, Kelechi darted to another location, snapping twigs and shaking branches to create the illusion of movement. The bandits, now on high alert, began to shout and point in different directions, their confusion growing with each new disturbance. Kelechi used their disorientation to his advantage, moving silently from one spot to another, always staying just out of sight. He sets small fires away from the captives, uses his tail to mimic animal noises, creating more confusion and panic amongst the bandits. Meanwhile, Ajani crept quietly towards the bamboo cage, his heart racing as he drew closer to his captive wife and the other women. With each step, he fought the urge to rush forward, knowing that any sudden movement could alert the bandits to his presence. As he reached the cage, Ajani carefully began to untie the bindings that held the door shut. His fingers worked deftly, years of experience guiding his movements. The women inside, seeing their chance at freedom, remained silent, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. Finally, the last knot came loose, and Ajani gently swung the door open. He gestured for the women to exit quickly and quietly, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of trouble. Ngozi emerged from the cage, her face streaked with tears of relief. When she saw her husband standing before her, she nearly cried out in joy, but Ajani placed a finger to his lips, urging her to remain silent. As the other women filed out of the cage, Ngozi embraced Ajani, her body trembling with emotion. "Ajani, my love," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You came for us." Ajani held her tightly, his own eyes brimming with tears. "I will always come for you, Ngozi," he murmured. "Always." Suddenly, Ngozi pulled back, her eyes searching Ajani's face. "Our son, Kelechi," she asked urgently, her voice tinged with worry. "Have you seen him? Is he safe?" Ajani hesitated for a moment, his heart heavy with the knowledge of the dangerous task their son had undertaken. He knew he couldn't lie to his wife, but he also didn't want to add to her fears. "He is nearby," Ajani assured her, though he withheld the full truth of Kelechi's perilous distraction tactic. "We must hurry now. Kelechi is creating a diversion for us to escape." Ngozi nodded, understanding flashing in her eyes as she rallied the other captives to follow Ajani. She took one last glance around the campsite, hoping for a glimpse of her son, but trusting in his strength and in the wisdom passed down by Uzoma that now guided him through this dangerous ruse. Kelechi hid in the shadows, his body coiled with tension as he awaited the approaching bandits. His keen senses, honed by his time in the jungle, alerted him to their presence long before they came into view. As the first bandit stepped into his line of sight, Kelechi sprang into action, his tail whipping out with lightning speed and precision. The bandit crumpled to the ground, his cry of pain cut short by the force of the blow. Kelechi moved like a phantom, striking from the darkness and disappearing before the other bandits could react. His tail became an extension of his body, a powerful weapon that he wielded with deadly accuracy. Meanwhile, Ajani led the captives through the dense undergrowth, his heart pounding with the urgency of their escape. Ngozi and the other women followed close behind, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and determination. The forest seemed to close in around them, the twisted roots and low-hanging branches threatening to impede their progress. Ajani navigated the treacherous terrain with the skill of a seasoned hunter, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. At times, the group had to crawl on their hands and knees to avoid detection, the damp earth clinging to their skin and clothes. As they pressed deeper into the jungle, the sounds of the bandit camp faded behind them, replaced by the eerie stillness of the forest. Ajani knew that every step took them closer to safety, but he also understood the risks that lay ahead. The jungle was a harsh and unforgiving place, filled with hidden dangers that could strike at any moment. Back at the camp, Ndidi's rage boiled over as he realized the extent of the deception. His captives had vanished, and the sounds of commotion from the jungle's edge told him that his men were under attack. The bandit leader's eyes narrowed, his mind racing as he pieced together the events that had unfolded. This had happened because they were busily partying over their previous victory and were overdrunk, causing them to lose focus. So they were caught off guard by the cunning plot of Kelechi and Ajani. Ndidi felt that something was not right. His sharp vision penetrated the darkness and deceit. He could not be easily tricked by distractions. A deep growl came from his throat when he found the cage open. His captives had escaped. With a roar of fury, Ndidi summoned his remaining men, his voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. He knew that someone had dared to challenge his authority, to strike at the heart of his operation. He divided his men into two groups. The first group, led by Basi, his second in command, were assigned to go to Udo village, do their usual, and capture the chief and deliver him to Ndidi. Make sure the most important thing, his royal crown, is also delivered. I will soon present myself as their new ruler, Ndidi outlined. The second group were to go after the missing captives in the jungle and bring them back to their cage. They will join the first group in the attack of Udo village after their mission was completed. They had to act with immediate effect. Anger twisted Ndidi's expression as he issued commands to his troops. "Find them!" he roared, veins bulging with fury. "They can't have gone far. And as for me, leave the camp to me. I will find out who is behind this distraction and stop them," Ndidi said. And as he charged through the camp, his fingers wrapped tightly around his machete's hilt, Ndidi swore that he would make them pay for their insolence. Ajani had just reached the safe hideout, a hidden alcove veiled by thick foliage and known only to a trusted few, himself and Kelechi, when he heard distant shouts of alarm slicing through the night air. He guided the women inside before turning back toward Udo village. "No matter what, do not come out of this hideout. Myself or my son, Kelechi, will come back for you soon when the time is right," Ajani instructed. Ajani needed to warn Udo village of what was coming. Ndidi's wrath would be swift and merciless. With one last look at Ngozi, whose eyes brimmed with a mix of fear and gratitude, Ajani melted back into the forest shadows, his steps quickening as he raced against time itself. As Ndidi's men scrambled to follow their leader's commands, they scoured the jungle for any trace of the escaped captives. Ndidi's men scattered into the underbrush, their movements swift and silent as they searched high and low for any sign of the escaped captives. Despite their efforts, the traces of the villagers' passage had been expertly concealed by Ajani's guidance. Frustration mounted as the minutes ticked by and the bandits grew increasingly anxious under the weight of Ndidi's fury. Meanwhile, Ajani burst into Udo village, his lungs burning and his heart pounding. He had pushed himself to the brink of exhaustion, driven by the urgency of his mission. As he stumbled into the center of the village, he raised his voice, summoning everyone to gather around him. The villagers, startled by the commotion, emerged from their huts, their faces etched with concern and curiosity. Ajani wasted no time in delivering his dire warning. He spoke of Ndidi's impending attack, his words painting a vivid picture of the bandit leader's wrath and the danger that loomed on the horizon. He recounted the escape of their loved ones as well, all made possible by his son, Kelechi. The villagers listened in stunned silence, their eyes wide with fear as they grasped the gravity of the situation. They knew all too well the strength of Ndidi's forces, and the thought of facing them head-on sent a chill down their spines. The village erupted into a frenzy of activity. Doors slammed, shouts filled the air, and torches flickered to life as warriors grabbed their spears and mothers clutched their children close. The knowledge of Ndidi's impending attack hung over them like a storm cloud, threatening to burst at any moment. Back in the jungle, Kelechi stepped from the shadows to face Ndidi alone in a clearing away from the camp. His figure was lit by the soft glow of moonlight filtering through the trees. Kelechi confronted Ndidi, his heart pounding in his chest as he revealed himself as the mastermind behind the distraction. The bandit leader's eyes narrowed, a flicker of recognition crossing his features as he took in the sight of the young man before him. "Oh, so it's you, the monkey boy," Ndidi sneered, his words dripping with disdain. Kelechi stood tall, his gaze unwavering as he met Ndidi's mocking stare. "My name is Kelechi," he replied, his voice steady and firm. As the tension between them crackled like electricity, Kelechi tried to appeal to Ndidi's better nature. He spoke of the possibility of change, of leaving behind the life of violence and cruelty and returning home to make amends. With a mixture of fear and determination, he drew upon the wisdom instilled in him by Uzoma and the experiences that had shaped his life. With a steadying breath, he began to speak, his words carrying the weight of his struggles and the hope for a better future. "Ndidi, I know the pain you've endured," Kelechi said, his voice soft but firm. "I too have felt the sting of rejection, the cruelty of being cast out by those who should have loved and protected me." Ndidi's eyes narrowed, but he remained silent, allowing Kelechi to continue. "When Udo village sent me into the wilderness, I thought my life was over. I believed I was cursed, that I would never find acceptance or happiness." Kelechi's voice wavered, the memories of his exile still raw and painful. "But I discovered something in the depths of my despair, Ndidi. I found the strength to turn the evil that had been done to me into something good. I learned to embrace my differences, to use my unique gifts to help others." Kelechi's words hung in the air, the sincerity in his voice palpable. Ndidi's expression remained stoic, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, a hint of recognition, perhaps even a glimmer of understanding. "You have the power to do the same, Ndidi," Kelechi pressed on, his voice growing stronger with each word. "You can choose to let go of the anger and the pain, to return home and make amends. Imagine the peace that could come from mending the differences between you and the village, the happiness that could flourish if we all learned to accept and embrace one another. Tears glistened in Kelechi's eyes as he spoke, the emotion of his words washing over him. He could see the conflict playing out on Ndidi's face, the battle between the hardened bandit and the wounded soul beneath. "Pretty words, monkey boy," Ndidi sneered, his voice dripping with contempt as he took a step closer to the young man. "You truly believe you can change what has been done? So can you bring my mother back to life?" Ndidi asked, his voice almost curious. "You know, Kelechi," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time for a change for the better." Kelechi nodded, his heart pounding with hope that his words had reached through years of bitterness and pain. A silence fell between them, a momentary truce in which anything seemed possible. For a moment, it seemed as though Ndidi was considering Kelechi's words, his expression softening ever so slightly. But then, like a switch being flipped, Ndidi's expression hardened once more, a cold smile twisting his lips. "But you're a fool if you think I'll fall for your tricks. I have plans for you, and for Udo village, and no amount of your muling will change that." Kelechi's heart sank as he realized that his words had fallen on deaf ears. Ndidi's heart was too consumed by hatred and the desire for revenge to be swayed by the promise of forgiveness and peace. "You are just like your mother, naive," Ndidi spat out before launching forward with unexpected ferocity. Ndidi's powerful hand smashed into Kelechi's face so fast it was hard to see. The powerful hit made Kelechi fall back and land on the ground. Kelechi's face throbbed with terrible pain that made it hard for him to see straight or think clearly as he struggled to get up. As he fought to stay conscious, Kelechi's last thought was of his family, of the village he had sworn to protect. And then, as the darkness closed in around him, he felt himself slipping away, his fate hanging in the balance as Ndidi towered over him, a twisted smile on his face. As he slowly regained his senses, he realized that he was no longer in control of his own body. Ndidi's cunning had prevailed. With a triumphant cackle, the bandit leader dragged his unconscious captive deeper into the jungle, unaware of the fierce determination that still burned within Kelechi's unyielding spirit. Kelechi fought to regain control, straining against the invisible force that held him bound. He could feel the damp earth beneath him, smell the pungent scent of decaying leaves, and hear the eerie sounds of the nocturnal jungle. But his limbs remained unresponsive, his body a mere vessel in the hands of his ruthless adversary. As they ventured deeper into the jungle's depths, Kelechi's mind raced. He knew he had to find a way to break free, to save his family and the village of Ndidi's treacherous plan. But how? His mind was his only weapon, and his captor was relentless, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Time seemed to stretch into an eternity as Kelechi desperately searched for a glimmer of hope, a way to regain his freedom and save his village from imminent danger. The faint glimmer of resilience within him flickered, refusing to be extinguished, even in the face of such adversity. Ndidi's laughter pierced the heavy jungle air as he tied Kelechi to a tree at the edge of his camp. The ropes bit into Kelechi's wrists, but it was the sting of humiliation that burned fiercer. Ndidi paraded in front of him, his every word dripping with scorn.
This story is about to get even more interesting. Therefore, I really need to know that you are enjoying the story. So say something in the comment section, or you can comment whatever it is that you like. I really want to see that you guys are enjoying the story for me to be motivated to post the next story. So please, first of all, subscribe. Secondly, please make sure to like the video. And thirdly, please write a comment, write anything. So first of all, tell me how interesting the story is and what you've actually learned.
Back in Udo village, chaos reigned as Ndidi's men launched their assault. The villagers fought bravely, their spears and arrows clashing against the bandits' crude weapons. But the raiders' numbers were too great, their ferocity unmatched. The defense crumbled, cries of despair echoed through the night. Basi led the charge with brutal efficiency, cornering Chief Okenwa within his own compound. The chief's wisdom and authority had always been the village's guiding light. Now, bound and defeated, he was dragged away like a trophy of war, his royal crown taken, signifying total defeat and disgrace. With Chief Okenwa captive, and Basi returning to camp with news of victory, the remaining bandits stood watch over Udo village, making sure no one would escape. Upon receiving the chief at camp, Ndidi's eyes gleamed with triumph. "You see, even your precious leader couldn't stop us," he boasted. The significance of capturing Chief Okenwa could not be overstated. He was not just their leader, but a symbol of Udo village's unity and strength. With him in chains, hope dwindled like a dying flame. "Now where is the most important trophy?" Ndidi asked. Basi handed him the royal crown. Ndidi was filled with joy as he was very close to making his dream a reality. Why was Ndidi so eager to receive the royal crown? Well, wearing it could mark him as the supreme ruler of Udo village. But then, there is even more profound reason to Ndidi wanting the royal crown so badly. Let me tell you the backstory. Little did young Ndidi know that the words his mother was about to speak would forever change the course of his life and the fate of Udo village. This was before Ndidi's mother, Chika's untimely death at the riverbank. On a quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the shadows of the jungle grew long, Chika called young Ndidi to her side. She had been contemplating the hardships they had endured and the uncertain future that lay ahead, and she felt compelled to share a piece of her past with her son. With a heavy heart, Chika began to recount the tale of her exile from Udo village and the secret she had carried with her all these years. She spoke of the hidden temple deep within the jungle. Chika's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she pulled her young son close, her voice trembling with emotion. "Ndidi, my boy, there's something I must tell you, a secret that has been passed down through our family for generations." Ndidi looked up at his mother, his brow furrowed with concern. "What is it, Mama? Why are you crying?" Chika took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Many years ago, when I was a young girl in Udo village, I overheard the elders speaking of a hidden temple deep within the jungle. They spoke of an ancient staff, a weapon of immense power that resided within its walls. But there were trials and dangers that lay within. The temple was guarded by treacherous traps and deadly creatures." Ndidi's eyes widened, a flicker of excitement dancing in their depths. "A weapon like the ones the warriors use?" Chika shook her head, a sad smile playing on her lips. "No, my son, this staff is different. It is said to hold the power to command the very elements, to grant its wielder unimaginable strength and wisdom. But it is also a burden, a heavy responsibility that can corrupt even the purest of hearts." Her voice heavy with emotion as she continued her story. "There's more, Ndidi. The elders spoke of a prophecy, a prediction that the one who wields the staff and wears the royal crown of Udo village will become an unstoppable force, a ruler whose power cannot be challenged." Ndidi's eyes widened, a mix of wonder and confusion on his face. "The royal crown, like the one Chief Okenwa wears?" Chika nodded, her expression grave. Yes, my son. The prophecy states that when the staff and the crown are brought together, the wielder will become the ultimate authority, a king or queen whose reign will last for generations. Ndidi fell silent, trying to process this new information. Chika gently lifted his chin, forcing him to meet her gaze. But listen to me, Ndidi. This power is not meant for just anyone. The prophecy speaks of a chosen one, a hero who will use the staff and the crown to save Udo village from a great calamity. It is not a tool for revenge or personal gain. Tears streamed down Chika's face as she implored her son to understand. Promise me, Ndidi. Promise me that you will never seek out the staff or the crown for yourself. Promise me that you will trust in the wisdom of the prophecy and let the chosen one fulfill their destiny. Ndidi, his own eyes glistening with tears, nodded solemnly. I promise, Mama. I will never forget your words, and I will always strive to be the man you want me to be. Chika smiled through her tears, hugging her son tightly. I know you will, my boy. I know you will. As they held each other in the fading light of dusk, Chika's heart was heavy with the knowledge that she had placed a great burden on her young son's shoulders. She knew that the lure of power, especially the power to rule and control, could be incredibly tempting. But she also knew that it was crucial for Ndidi to understand the true nature of the prophecy and the importance of letting the chosen one fulfill their destiny. Little did Chika know that her words, meant to guide and protect her son, would one day be twisted by Ndidi's anger and ambition, setting him on a path that would bring him into direct conflict with the very chosen one she had spoken of. Years later, after Chika's tragic death and Ndidi's rise to power as the leader of the bandits, the memory of that conversation resurfaced. Ndidi, consumed by his anger and resentment towards Udo village, began to see the staff as the key to his revenge and his ultimate conquest. He became obsessed with the idea of claiming the artifact for himself, convinced that he was the true chosen one, destined to rule over the region. It was then that Ndidi, armed with the knowledge his mother had imparted, began to seek out more information about the hidden temple. He captured the village elder, pressing him for details about the temple's location and the trials that lay within, using the information his mother had given him to confirm the elder's story. Ndidi, consumed by his anger and resentment towards Udo village, had tucked this information away, biding his time until he could use it to his advantage. As he rose to power as the leader of the bandits, he began to piece together the fragments of the legend, seeking out ancient texts and consulting with mystics who whispered of the staff's connection to the chief's crown. Unbeknownst to Kelechi, Ndidi had been quietly gathering information about the temple's location and the trials that lay within. He had sent scouts to scour the jungle, searching for any signs of the hidden entrance, and had even managed to infiltrate Udo village, planting spies who could keep him informed of any developments. When Ndidi learned of Kelechi's existence and the prophecy surrounding the young man, he knew that he had to act fast. He recognized that Kelechi posed a significant threat to his plans, and he became determined to reach the temple first and claim the staff and crown for himself. Okay, back to the story. As Ndidi prepared to make his grand entrance as the new ruler of Udo village, an uneasy stillness settled over the once vibrant community. Fear gripped every heart. Their fates now lay in the hands of merciless men who had shattered their peace under cover of darkness. Ndidi's men paraded the captured chief through the village, their faces twisted with cruel satisfaction. The once proud leader of Udo village was now a mere shadow of his former self, a symbol of their own vulnerability and the bandits' ruthless power. In Udo village, the remaining bandits stood guard, their weapons at the ready. They barked orders at the frightened villagers, demanding their obedience and submission. The air was thick with tension, the villagers' hearts heavy with the knowledge that their chief had been taken from them. One bandit climbed onto a crate, raising his voice for all to hear, his voice booming across the gathered crowd. "Listen up, people of Udo village," he shouted, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Your chief has been captured, and now we are in control. From this moment forward, you will answer to us and our leader, Ndidi. We are in control now. Listen to us, and no one will get hurt." The villagers huddled together, their faces etched with terror and despair. They had fought bravely, but the bandits' superior numbers and weaponry had overwhelmed them. The loss of their chief was a devastating blow, a symbol of their shattered hopes and dreams, and were vulnerable at the mercy of Ndidi and his ruthless band of outlaws. Meanwhile, deep in the jungle, Kelechi remained tied to a tree, his body aching from the brutal treatment he had endured. Ndidi stood before him, his face twisted with cruel amusement. "Look at you, monkey boy," Ndidi sneered. "You thought you could save your village, but now you're nothing more than a pathetic captive. Thought you could change me with your pathetic tales. You're nothing but a tied-up freak. You see, even your precious leader, the once great Okenwa, couldn't stop us," he boasted to Kelechi. "Wait, what does this make me? A hero? I have the most important people of Udo at my feet. First their savior, and now their king. I even have the royal crown all to myself." Ndidi burst into laughter. Kelechi gritted his teeth, refusing to give Ndidi the satisfaction of seeing him broken. Despite his dire situation, his spirit remained unbroken, determined to find a way to escape and save his village from the clutches of the bandits. Ndidi towered over his captive, relishing the power he held over the man who had once looked down upon him and his mother. With a mocking laugh, Ndidi grabbed the chief by the chin, forcing him to meet his gaze. "Look at you now, O great chief," Ndidi sneered. "Not so high and mighty anymore, are you? Who would have known this day would come? The great Okenwa pleading for mercy from an outcast like me?" The chief remained silent, his eyes filled with a mixture of defiance and despair, knowing his capture signified more than just his own fate. It marked the fall of Udo village, the end of an era. As Okenwa looked at Kelechi being tied to a tree and himself being bound in chains, he shook his head in disbelief, knowing that there was no hope. As he stared at Kelechi, he realized how strong and relentless he was, having been able to survive in the jungle to this day. He was filled with guilt for his bad decision. Kelechi focused on the pendant around his neck. As he did, a warmth spread through his body, and he felt a surge of energy coursing through his veins. He closed his eyes and concentrated, and soon he was transported to a strange and wonderful place. He saw the hidden temple, its entrance shrouded in mist and mystery. He saw himself, his tail coiled with power, standing before the ancient doors, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. And then he heard Uzoma's voice, whispering the secret of the staff and the key to unlocking its power. "The staff is powerful," his mentor's voice echoed in his mind, "but it is also dangerous. You must use it wisely, but make sure you grab it first before anyone else does." Kelechi nodded, his heart pounding with excitement and trepidation. He knew that he had to find the staff and harness its power, or else Ndidi would succeed in his quest for ultimate dominance. Kelechi's eyes snapped open, a newfound determination burning within him. The vision from Uzoma had shown him the path he needed to take, and he knew he had to act fast. Using the strength and agility granted to him by his unique tail, Kelechi began to work at his bonds, his mind focused on the task at hand. Meanwhile, Ndidi and Basi dragged the chief through the dense jungle, making their way towards the secret temple. Ndidi's heart raced with anticipation, knowing that the ancient staff and the royal crown were within his grasp. With each step, he could feel the power that awaited him, the ultimate dominance he had always craved. In the secret hideout, Ngozi and the other captives followed Ajani's instructions, remaining hidden and out of sight. They huddled together, their hearts filled with fear and uncertainty, but they clung to the hope that Kelechi would find a way to save them and the village. Back in Udo village, Mama Decay moved among the villagers, her presence a calming force amidst the chaos. She whispered words of reassurance, urging them to remain strong and have faith in the face of adversity. Despite the watchful eyes of the bandits, Mama Decay knew that the villagers needed her guidance now more than ever. As Kelechi worked tirelessly to free himself, his mind raced with the knowledge that Ndidi was on his way to claim the ancient staff and the royal crown. He knew that if Ndidi succeeded, all would be lost. But Kelechi refused to let that happen. With every fiber of his being, he was determined to stop Ndidi and save his village from the clutches of the wicked bandit leader. Kelechi maneuvered his tail with incredible precision, breaking free from the ropes that bound him to the tree. To his shock, his tail seemed to have a mind of its own, pulling him with an irresistible force towards an unknown destination deep in the jungle. As he followed the mysterious pull, Kelechi's eyes widened in disbelief when he stumbled upon the secret temple. The ancient structure was shrouded in an eerie mist, its walls adorned with intricate carvings and symbols that seemed to whisper secrets of a forgotten past. Kelechi approached the temple cautiously, his senses on high alert. He knew that the temple was guarded by treacherous traps and deadly creatures, ready to thwart any intruder who dared to enter. With his tail coiled and ready, Kelechi summoned all his courage and swiftness, determined to bypass the obstacles that lay ahead. Using his agility and quick reflexes, Kelechi dodged the hidden spikes that shot out from the walls and leaped over the gaping pits that threatened to swallow him whole. His tail proved to be an invaluable asset, allowing him to swing across chasms and deflect the venomous darts that whizzed past his head. Finally, after a harrowing journey through the temple's defenses, Kelechi found himself standing before the entrance to the inner sanctum. As he stepped inside, his heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. But Kelechi soon realized that he was not alone in his quest. Ndidi, the ruthless bandit leader, had also learned of the ancient staff's existence. Driven by an insatiable hunger for power, Ndidi had set out to claim the staff for himself, determined to crush any remaining resistance and cement his rule over Udo village. As Kelechi ventured deeper into the temple, he knew that a final confrontation with Ndidi was inevitable. The fate of Udo village and the entire region hung in the balance, and Kelechi was determined to emerge victorious. With his unique abilities and unwavering resolve, he prepared himself for the battle that lay ahead, ready to face whatever challenges the temple and Ndidi had in store for him. Kelechi burst into the inner sanctum, his heart pounding with adrenaline. To his horror, he saw Ndidi standing before the ancient staff, the royal crown already perched upon his head. The village chief, still bound in chains and held by Basi, looked on in shock and disbelief as Ndidi reached out to claim the ultimate power. But Kelechi was not about to let that happen. With lightning-fast reflexes, he coiled his tail and launched himself towards the staff. As Ndidi's fingers grazed the ancient artifact, Kelechi's tail whipped through the air, striking the bandit leader across the face with a resounding crack. Stunned by the sudden attack, Ndidi stumbled backward, his hand recoiling from the staff. Seizing the opportunity, Kelechi's tail wrapped around the staff, yanking it towards him with a triumphant flourish. Ndidi roared with rage, his eyes blazing with fury. He lunged at Kelechi, determined to wrest the staff from his grasp. Basi, loyal to his leader, charged forward to join the fray, but Kelechi was ready for them. As he gripped the staff tightly, he felt a surge of power coursing through his body. He gained muscles. His tail began to glow with an otherworldly light, pulsing with ancient energy. Ndidi and Basi attacked with ferocious intensity, their weapons slashing through the air. But Kelechi, now fortified with the staff's power, moved with unnatural speed and grace. He dodged their blows effortlessly, his tail striking with the force of a whirlwind. The village chief watched in awe as Kelechi unleashed the full might of the staff. Bolts of lightning crackled from its tip, slamming into Ndidi and sending him flying across the chamber. Basi, realizing the tide had turned tail and fled, disappearing into the shadows. Ndidi, battered and beaten, staggered to his feet. He made one last desperate attempt to seize the staff, but Kelechi was too quick. With a final, devastating blow, Kelechi sent Ndidi crashing to the ground, defeated and broken. As the dust settled, Kelechi stood tall, the ancient staff held aloft in his hand. He could feel the wisdom of the ages flowing through him, granting him strength and power beyond his wildest dreams. The village chief, freed from his chains, looked upon Kelechi with a mixture of reverence and gratitude. Kelechi had emerged victorious, outsmarting Ndidi and claiming the staff for himself. With this new power at his command, he knew that he could finally protect Udo village and bring peace to the land. The journey had been long and perilous, but in that moment, Kelechi knew that it had all been worth it. Kelechi's fingers closed around the royal crown, its metal cool and heavy in his grip. Ndidi lay sprawled on the stone floor, his breaths ragged, his eyes filled with disbelief. The boy could have placed the crown upon his own head, claimed the power it signified, but he chose a different path. Turning to Chief Okenwa, Kelechi extended the symbol of absolute rule. The elder's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and shame clouding his features. After all the village had done to Kelechi, after all the pain and rejection, here he stood, offering kindness instead of vengeance. "Take it," Chief Okenwa said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It belongs to you. I have failed my people. Please forgive me for all I did to you." Kelechi shook his head gently, the tail behind him swaying with a quiet grace. "I do not seek power that does not belong to me. I am only here to help my people. I forgive you, but I can't have that." Carefully, he placed the crown back upon Okenwa's head. Just then, Uzoma appeared before Kelechi with a knowing smile creasing his face. "You have made it, my boy. You have fulfilled the prophecy." He pointed toward the entrance of the temple, where a white horse stood bathed in an ethereal light. "Hop on it, that will take you home. It signifies your victory. You left Udo as an outcast, now you go back as king," Uzoma said. Back in Udo village, an ominous thunder rolled across the sky, followed by heavy rain. The villagers emerged from their huts, their faces etched with confusion and wonderment. The last time they had witnessed such a downpour was when Kelechi was exiled. Despite their captivity, smiles crept onto their faces. Mama Decay lifted her hands to the sky and whispered thanks to the ancestors, her heart knowing that something positive had happened. Kelechi mounted the white horse provided by Uzoma as Chief Okenwa climbed up behind him, holding onto Kelechi's waist for support. Ndidi was bound with a rope to the horse's saddle, his head hanging low in defeat as they set off through the rains toward Udo village. But first, Kelechi had to retrieve his mother and the other captives from their secret hideout, nestled deep within the jungle's embrace. Rain drummed a steady rhythm on the leaves above as Kelechi dismounted the white horse. He approached the secret hideout where his father, Ajani, had hidden the captives and his mother. With trembling hands, he pushed open the door, the creaking sound echoing through the stillness. Inside, the captives huddled together, their eyes wide with fear, thinking that one of Ndidi's men had come for them. But then, Kelechi's voice rang out, filled with joy and relief. "Mama, it's me, Kelechi, your son. Come out now because you are free." At his words, Ngozi emerged from the shadows, her face a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming happiness. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she ran towards her son, her arms outstretched. Kelechi embraced his mother, holding her tight as they both wept with joy. She stepped into the light, her gaze locking onto her son's form. The sight of him, stronger, more confident, brought tears to her eyes. "Kelechi," she whispered, as if speaking any louder might shatter the moment into an illusion. "Yes, Mama," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "It's me." In an instant, they were in each other's arms, Ngozi holding Kelechi as if she could shield him from the world's cruelties with her embrace alone. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw, her touch reaffirming that this was no dream. "My boy," she murmured into his shoulder, "I knew you would return to us. I knew." Kelechi pulled back just enough to look into his mother's eyes. "You never gave up on me." "Never," Ngozi affirmed, cupping his face in her hands. "You are my heart's joy, my brave son." Their reunion sparked a flame of hope in the other captives who began to step out from their shadowed confines into freedom's light. They gathered around mother and son, their faces etched with smiles born from relief and newfound freedom. With Ngozi by his side and the other women forming a procession behind them, Kelechi mounted the horse once more. The village chief took his place behind Kelechi, while Ndidi remained bound and defeated. As they set off towards Udo village, the women, led by Ngozi, formerly captives, freed by Kelechi, sang songs of freedom to honor the young hero. They led the way as Kelechi followed behind, triumphantly riding his white horse and holding his staff. As the triumphant procession neared Udo village, the villagers heard the echoes of joyous songs carried on the wind. Curiosity and anticipation filled the air as they gathered at the village entrance, their eyes straining to catch a glimpse of the approaching group. The bandits, who had been left behind to guard the village, were happy, believing that their leader, Ndidi, had finally claimed his rightful place as king. But their expectations were shattered when the procession came into view. Leading the way were the freed captives, their voices raised in triumphant chants, their faces radiant with newfound hope. Behind them, riding atop a majestic white horse, sat Kelechi, his presence exuding strength and confidence. Gasps of disbelief and wonder rippled through the crowd as they recognized the boy they had once scorned and exiled. Alongside Kelechi rode Chief Okenwa, alive and well, the royal crown still perched upon his head. The villagers erupted in cheers, their hearts swelling with relief and gratitude. The bandits, caught off guard by this unexpected turn of events, readied their weapons, preparing to fight. But their resolve crumbled when they saw their once feared leader, Ndidi, bound and defeated, trailing behind Kelechi's horse. As Kelechi dismounted, the ancient staff held firmly in his grasp, the bandits marveled at the sight. Realizing the futility of their cause, they retreated, attempting to escape. But Kelechi's voice rang out, clear and commanding, "Seize them now!" The villagers, emboldened by Kelechi's presence, sprang into action, capturing the fleeing bandits. Kelechi addressed the captive bandits, his voice filled with authority. "Listen well if you wish to live. For all the years of trouble you have brought upon my village, you will now undo them. You will rebuild the damaged houses, aid the villagers in their farms, and help with animal husbandry. You will remain our prisoners and work to make amends for eternity." The village erupted in jubilation, their voices rising in a chorus of praise for Kelechi. They marveled at how Mama Decay had been right all along. Kelechi was indeed the hero foretold in the prophecy. Chief Okenwa stepped forward, his eyes brimming with gratitude as he recounted the tale of Kelechi's selflessness in the temple, how he had refused the chance to become king and instead chose to serve his people. Ajani and Ngozi embraced their son, tears of joy streaming down their faces. Mama Decay approached Kelechi, her eyes shining with pride as she congratulated him for his unwavering determination. The families of the returned captives reunited, their laughter and tears mingling as they thanked Kelechi and the ancestors for their deliverance. The days of fear and trepidation had given way to a season of peace and prosperity in Udo village. Where once the shadow of Ndidi and his bandits loomed, now only the gentle rhythms of daily life persisted. The fields, once neglected during times of strife, flourished under the diligent hands of those same bandits who now worked them as captives. Ndidi, stripped of his command, labored alongside his former subordinates, their glances often darting towards Kelechi, who with the ancient staff in hand had the power to command them. Kelechi walked among the villagers with a quiet authority, the staff a symbol of his guardianship rather than dominance. He had made a vow, a promise etched deep within his heart, not to use this extraordinary power for selfish gains. His eyes reflected not the pride of conquest, but the serenity of purpose. Children played at his feet, their laughter a testament to the village's newfound freedom. They marveled at Odudu, Kelechi's tale, which had become a tale of legend in itself, a symbol of strength and uniqueness that now inspired rather than incited fear. It was amidst this tranquil setting that Uzoma appeared to Kelechi once more. The ancient mentor's eyes held a mix of pride and sadness as he approached the young hero. "You have done it all well done, boy," Uzoma said with a gentle smile. "I have finished playing my part assigned by the ancestors to be a guide to you towards your journey. It is time for me to leave." Kelechi felt a twinge in his chest, a combination of gratitude and impending loss. Uzoma had been more than a mentor. He had been a beacon during Kelechi's darkest moments. "But you have one last choice to make," Uzoma continued, his voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "Do you want to keep your Odudu, or do you want to lose it to become normal as everyone?" Kelechi looked down at his tail, Odudu, which swayed gently behind him. It was part of who he was. It was his challenge and his gift. A smile tugged at the corner of his lips as he prepared to make his wish. "I want to," Kelechi began, his decision clear in his heart. And with those words hanging in the air, Uzoma's form began to fade, leaving Kelechi standing amongst his people, ready to embrace whatever came next.